I really think that it's about I think the heart says in my message, being good is cool. Being good is actually the only thing that our concerns should be aligned with. Like it's the only thing that we should be thinking about, caring about, invested in.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to It's a Matter of Speaking, a podcast for leading voices in the arenas of health, wealth, and you got it, relationships. We talk to people that have a message in their heart, they have a mastery in their mind, something that they've been cultivating. It's sparked recently. They want to get it out there. They don't know how. We talk to clients that we have that have had success at Leadr, whether through speaking on a TEDx stage, speaking on virtual or physical platforms around the world, or building their own successful business in hopes of not only sharing their story because it's cool to learn, but potentially reaching anybody out there watching this that you have your own message or mastery and you're looking to get it out there and you're curious as to how to do that. Today, we speak in the realm of relationships with Korbin Paul, who is actually not only a client of Leadr's, she's also a speaker coach, master speaker coach on our team that helps other clients perfect their speaking craft to get it on the TEDx stage. It's awesome. She speaks from her mastery and her mission. She speaks from a client perspective and she speaks from a coaching perspective. So there's a lot to learn today. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Korbin is a world maker. She uses the lens of creativity and a farmer's humor in her coaching practice, where she accompanies people, community, and organizations on their journey to go within for a better outer world. Korbin is passionate about food and racial justice. You heard both of those correctly, and we talked about it. She believes cultivating our unique relationship with the Most High, capital M, capital H, Most High, is the most potent form of activism for her, and that it's necessary for aligned outer action. She's a graduate student of creative leadership with the Minneapolis College of Art and Design and is super pumped to be here today. There's so much we chatted about. We chatted about what wall you have your ladder on when it comes to leadership. We talk about how the voice of a leading voice is typically at the cutting edge. So it's not one that everyone agrees with right away. It shakes people up to start. Talked about how she got schooled early and how she continues to make tough decisions because that's powerful to her. She talks about what a healthy ecosystem looks like, both as a farmer, but also that internal ecosystem, how to connect with your body and mind. She gives ideas rather than says you have to do this. She talks about having the right system, support, and accountability, what she liked about Leadr. And the deeper power behind speaking, not just to get your voice out there, but the things we don't tend to see, the hidden power there. It was awesome. I think you're really going to like it. But before we dive into today's podcast, a quick word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Leadr.co. For the last 8 years now, Leadr.co has perfected the art of delivering a top-tier message to the world and building an authentic yet scalable offer on the back end. They've had over 700 people now land TEDx talks worldwide and thousands more speaking on platforms, virtual and physical, around the world. They also offer a program to help you build an authentic yet scalable offer program on the back end that you can sell for $2,000 to $5,000, $2,000 to $10,000 to help other people with your mastery. If you have a message in your heart, mastery in your mind, you want to learn about what all of our podcast guests have went through themselves, there's a link in the description below, free webinar that you can watch out, our website so you can see what we're all about. Feel free to comment and ask questions. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing. It's how we grow this channel. We really appreciate you. Now, over to me. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to It's a Matter of Speaking, a podcast for leading voices, episode 34. I am speaking with amazing human being, a client of Leadr, and an employee, a recent employee of Leadr, like recent, somewhat recent, someone been working here for a while part time. One of our speaker coaches, Miss Corbin Paul, welcome.
Hey, thank you. So happy and honored
It's
to
gonna be
be.
fun. We talked about this at our Friday huddle this morning of imagination, creativity. We're gonna dive into that today. Excited to chat with you about a wild background that you have. But
Checks notes.
it starts with the question I ask everybody. You kind of have this arena. We're talking relationships, but I mean, we mix the arenas of food and racism. You mix the arenas of mysticism and activism. All of this, though, you speak on, you consult on. You are a leading voice, right? For something you believe in. For you, what does it mean to be a leading voice in your arena?
I love this question so much. And in fact, I think that my answer is about my arena, but it's also applicable to all arenas
Mm-hmm.
because for me, leadership, like just starting with that, right? So like leadership is to me having your ladder on the right wall.
Hmm.
So it's getting uncomfortable, maybe sacrificing earthly comforts to do what's right in what I call the unseen. So leading people to do their dharma, what is their spiritual covenant, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, a leading voice then is on the cutting edge of that consciousness, but it's not necessarily a loud voice. It's not necessarily a voice that everyone's even listening to yet, because maybe the world's not ready for it. I feel like on the cuff, when you hear that term, it can feel like, oh, a leading voice, like everybody knows about that
Mm-hmm.
voice. But that I would say au contraire to that
Yeah,
part of
it's
it.
almost like being the one of the first voices, and when you're one of the first voices, it's a little disruptive.
That's the word, Dylan.
New new mission statement word in there. What how do you wrestle with having to be that disruptive voice? Because I would imagine it comes with some fear, like you are going to get looked at differently because you're saying something differently. How do you kind of wrestle? Do you wrestle with fear, and if so, how?
I love that question so much. I feel like the Most High really set me up on a track in life to get schooled early
Mm-hmm.
in how to reckon with that fear. And what I mean is that I grew up in a very conservative, small, white town
Hmm.
and always had a different drummer, you know? And my mom was always like, my girl's gonna dance to that tune. Like ain't nobody gonna be messing with that. And then she crossed on early. I was 22 years old when she died. And it was the first time that I was like, whoa, she was running all this interference, but it was so good that I didn't even know it.
Hmm.
Right. So I think there was some reckoning in the young 20s of starting, the voice coming and then realizing like that it was counter, it wasn't welcome, it was uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and how I deal with that fear though is just kind of that same thing that I said about leading voice, right? Is like it's meant to disrupt. It's meant to make people uncomfortable. And it's just like making it not personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an attack on me if someone doesn't like what I'm saying, right? It's just a reflection of where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And that I can actually love them right where they're at.
And the other thing that I like that you said about leadership is like put your ladder on the right wall, which I interpret it as like ladder is a place that you can climb as you can grow. But a lot of people, if they have it on the wrong wall, they're climbing and growing towards the wrong dharma. They're just getting very good at a skill that isn't really in tune with a deep desire. From what you've seen, you've coached a lot of people in speaking, right? You consult with a lot of people. You've done travels to Zimbabwe for your TEDx talk, which we're going to talk about later here. Ego aside, do you feel a lot of people have put their ladder on the wrong wall?
God, that's actually a complex question
You
for
think
me to answer,
I got
but
a ton more. Sorry.
well, I got it though. I actually would really appreciate answering this because I can feel that it's like a little bit of a new pocket within my own
Mhm.
heart to explore. Who am I to judge is the
Right.
first answer, right? Secondly, though, from my intuition, from my own deep spiritual taproot that I focus a lot of my time and attention on, talking about relationships, like
Hmm.
that's my most important one, right? Is
Hmm.
with the Most High. And so seeking that mystery, what I intuit is that there's a lot of distractions in the earth plane. There's a lot of walls that look good. And I think it's actually maybe part of our dharma to have our ladder on said wrong wall for
Hmm.
said amount of time. And that it's not necessarily wrong. but it is, we always have another moment
Mm-hmm.
with another opportunity for free will and another opportunity and another opportunity. So does that
Yeah,
satisfy?
what goes with it is like, and I think as the longer you're on said wrong wall, right? Again, who are we to judge? But the better you can juxtapose that when you change walls. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like, I think a lot of times that dharma that you talk about, or other people call it like ikigai, or it's like
Mm,
your destiny, your calling,
mm,
comes in the remembering. Like, I think it's probably good to forget, right? Because then when you remember, it's so strong and you realize why it's so important for you. Now, speaking of your wall, though, because
mm,
I am like, radical transparency is our number one core value at Leadr. I'm reading through your background. I'm like, my gosh, you could be like a polymath. Like, we
mm,
have regenerative fishing practices, both on a boat and off a boat. Like, you were like a fishing captain for a while, giving tours. We're talking of food. We're talking of racism. You worked with us and you talked about racism, and you did a TEDx talk in Zimbabwe. You're speaking to social enterprises. What do you feel is that through line, like that the heart of your message or the heart of
mm,
your wall?
mm. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I really think that it's about, I think the heart says in my message, being good is cool.
Hmm.
Being good is actually the only thing that our concerns should be aligned with. Like, it's the only thing that we should be thinking about,
Mm-hmm.
caring about, invested in. It's the wall. And that there's actually so many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, and I so much so have gone inward within myself, and this term that's come up from the ethers or the subterranean in my own coaching practice, called inner world ecosystems,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that is actually the soil. So, like, yeah, I started farming. I started like outside, hands in the dirt, learning how seeds reproduce, keeping 20,000 varieties of seeds at this organization here in Iowa. And I now am like, oh, that's the same work actually that I'm doing in coaching. It's just in the unseen. It's in the hearts and the minds of people. And that
Yeah,
deep soil is
yeah,
where
because
is where we can regenerate.
you brought this. It's in your intro, and it's also you said unseen now already, and I was curious about both of them. Unseen, inner world, can't see
Mm,
what's going on in here, right? And then for you, when you say inner world ecosystems, it's going into that unseen and treating it the same as we would treat that outer ecosystem. You know me, I love analogies and myths. And for me, a myth is just a concrete image that for man to make and woman to make sense of the world, right? It's so this myth that we're going to talk about is ecosystems, right? So we don't even talk about the inner world yet. For you, what does a good ecosystem need to be able to harvest good fruit, good growth?
yeah, yeah. Well, as all things in the creation story, it's mysterious,
Mm-hmm.
but we've got some science and we definitely have some intuition. And the words that come for me when I think of a healthy ecosystem is diversity,
Mm-hmm.
is balance, is dynamicness,
Mm-hmm.
complexity,
Mm-hmm.
and yet simplicity and operation of the complexity. Like, there's kind of a paradox there.
Mm-hmm.
And then movement, right? Like that, like there's inputs and there's outputs, and it's a cycle and it's moving. There's no stagnation in a healthy ecosystem. And there's also one last thing actually that I'm realizing, this is coming straight from my master's program that I'm in right now, because we learned that the word colonization actually means to cut at the soil, the root from the body,
Oh wow.
to sever. So it's connection as well, right?
Mm.
And that, I think, is probably one of the most prominent threads in my coaching work at this moment, is connection to ourselves, connection to others.
Hmm. And for you, I love that, by the way. And I also totally get when you say complexity and simplicity, it feels like this, it feels ironic. But
Mm,
my work as a consultant is you take like this chaos of what's going on in a business and you simplify it with frameworks. It's like chaos is beautiful, order just helps compartmentalize it where they can exist together. So I totally get that in a healthy ecosystem. What do you feel is, so we'll go first steps here, creating that connection with what you do now, with leaders, with your talk, with like, what do you feel is the first step for most people to create that connection?
Honesty
Ooh.
with yourself of how, like what you really feel and fear.
Mm-hmm. I want to go. Okay, okay, I'm gonna press it a little bit if that's cool, because I
Yeah,
think that's
press it. Let's
beautiful
go.
answer. And I also like, I would challenge it where I grow up, also small town, Midwest people. Let's go. Getting to that point of self awareness and honesty, I think, is difficult. Is
Mm,
there any practices that you do, or you've learned, or you teach to help people get to that honesty with themselves?
mm, mm. Yeah. Maybe a little anticlimactic, right? Because, well, maybe not.
Okay,
Maybe it's just in
I'll
our
be the
world
judge.
that yeah, that it's anything to embody, right? So like this is something I've been using in speaker coaching with Leadr is
Mm-hmm.
it's called activating poetic attention. It's a card deck I got from an embodiment practitioner in my degree, and it's I think anything that we can just that connects us to our body to be present. So things like
Hmm.
breath, right? Conscious breathing, uh, visualization, and then stream of consciousness writing, right? Like just really spending time. And again, it goes back to the inner world, right? Is that like what feelings and emotions and thoughts, like what are we thinking and what are those thoughts creating as far as feelings? And I think anything that allows us to get present and again honest looking, it's like we look at those things and go, oh, that's actually present.
Hmm. I really like that. So just consistent ways, and I like that you leave it up to the person listening right now. If you're listening, like and subscribe. But if you're also listening, you have your own way to get into your body, into your mind. Now you give 3 examples: breath, however you choose to do it. I think you can be one with your breath on a walk. Like, I don't think you have to be sitting in the lotus position to be like, I feel my breath and I'm with my body. Not at all. You could take your shoes off and go for a walk. But you're also saying like visualization, like ways to get to the mind, or free flow writing. I like that, because then when someone's like, this is the way to do it, for
Mm,
me, the stubborn Midwest asshole, I'm like, who the fuck are you to tell me to do it that way? I want to do it my own way, right? So giving it as this openness framework, yet also some chaos, simplicity, yet complexity, for other people to tap into it. Love that. And
mm,
with what we're talking about, I want to talk about what you do now in creative leadership, but I actually want to get to, you came into Leadr to land a TEDx talk. You
yeah.
clearly, you're talking about getting your master's, you have this wealth of knowledge. Do you recall where in your journey you were like, I want to get this on the biggest stage out there?
Why, yes, I do.
Oh, cool. Tell me.
So I trained at an amazing, anybody listening that wants to get into coaching, I will always plug where I trained,
Hmm.
the Health Coach Institute, which it's actually health and life coaching, but they teach the transformational coaching method. So I'm on this training, right? It's like 400 people in the Zoom. Last day, I get the last hot seat. So it's like 15 minutes and they pull you up on the Zoom screen, right? So you're like on the screen with one of the, there's kind of two co-founders. So I'm with one of them's coaching, and the other one, who is maybe I connect with a little more, was off screen and witnessing, watching, taking notes, whatever. So what we're done, she comes back on the screen, and it's like, you ever see, you can like almost tell someone's kind of just had a little touch of a mystical experience, like you like they're kind of, yeah. I could see that something was going on for her,
Mm-hmm.
right? She had just been moved, and then her voice is also reflecting that, and she comes and she says, I'm just getting, she uses those words, so it's like a prophesying,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
She says, I'm just getting, in a couple years your life is just going to be totally different. And then she's saying all these things, anyone would want to hear it, right? Like this, like you're going places, it's going to be amazing.
I told you, Dad. No, I'm kidding.
and then and then they take me off screen, and the last words out of her mouth, international public speaker, she says. And it was like a bolt of lightning went
Hmm.
through my spirit, and I felt it in my body. So then within a couple weeks, what I call the holiness that moves through all things, including the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a fan of that.
Yeah.
I see God written and moving everywhere. So here comes one of Leadr's most prominent faces on my screen telling me about the TEDx stage, and I just had this moment where I thought, it's not just going to happen, by like a snap in my finger, or, wiggling my nose. Like, I'm going to have to show up. And
Yeah.
because that's the coaching craft, what it's teaching me already. Right. So that was really the jump moment.
Hmm.
And there's a whole nother layer and stories to that around what I had to do to believe in myself with the money and all the things that, went into it.
Yeah, real quick, you're talking about the leader, that guy speaking, Taylor Conroy. If you would like that webinar that Korbin probably watched, link in the bio below. Did he have shirt on or off for when you saw him in the algorithm?
Great question. I believe it was what we call a wife beater.
Yeah. Okay. I know exactly which one you probably saw.
Yep.
No, but I really do like with what you're saying is, and shout out Taylor, I love you. It's a combination of intention and action. It's not like intention, snap your fingers, it's happening now. It's then also taking action. For you, what was like the last decision that you made to be like, no, I want to take action to take this seriously and actually land a TEDx talk?
What was the last action?
Yeah, like what for you? I guess what maybe the better question is like what pushed or forced or encouraged that action? Yeah.
Okay, so again, it's actually going back to our whole theme, the
Mm-hmm.
theme of this conversation, which is the relationship that I have with that which powers the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I stilled myself. That's what I'll do with big decisions, right? It's just like I still myself. I'm like, hey, was that you talking through my teacher?
Mm-hmm.
Is this you wanting me to go down this door? And then it's a feeling, it's an intuition. It's like a green light go.
Yeah.
And it was scary, but I had the like definite trust me.
Yeah.
Go.
And like I like how you say it's a feeling, it's an intuition, because I was actually going to be the question I asked next is like, what do you think is the comparison of what you're talking about in intuition? And it's the exact same thing. But it's people that say they listen to it. I think a lot of times, I remember when I was first, grew up Catholic. When I was like listening to God in my mind as a young kid, that myth is, hey Dylan, yeah, you should do it. Like I would actually hear it.
Right.
And I think what you're saying is no, you feel it.
Right.
What was then going through, let's talk as a client first, and then we'll talk as a coach. Going through as a client in the Leadr experience, what was the biggest takeaway you recall when it comes to applying for landing, prepping, and speaking on a TEDx talk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the biggest takeaway, just such an I'm just so impressed and continue to be impressed with what I would call like the right system,
Mm-hmm.
the right support, the right accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I say that in my private practice, there's 3 legs to that coaching stool,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the right system, it's the right support, it's the right accountability. And so in the system, there's just a lot of clarity. And again, with the support and the accountability, you're like, all right, I put my skin in the game. I'm showing up. And I'm gonna be real with those of you listening, like it's work. Yeah, it's work. You gotta show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's worth it too. Every single like moment and doubt and sticky spot, it's all worth it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so true when you start anything. It's like it becomes simpler, but it doesn't make it easy. Like it's just like, oh, like you say, snap my finger. Someone said I'll do it, or I invest in myself. Snap my finger. It's then no, it's almost like a piece of energy, right? That we're putting towards it with our investment, and then
That's
that
it.
is like, well, I'm invested. That if you look at it as an energy investment, like now I really want to make sure I'm making the most out of it, and it led to you speaking in Zimbabwe. This is one of the things you and I have in common, both time in Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I knew that about you with
Yeah.
the stuff.
Habariako out there, Kenyans. No, what was it? What was it like just being able to fly to Zimbabwe to speak?
Wow. And part of it too, right? The prophecy, international
Yeah.
prophecy. I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, even if this is the only one, like, I'm in the air. So another part of Leadr, right, is the community. So like someone I coached and helped get her first talk ready for India. We meet every Friday now because we're like we're colleagues now, right?
Mhm.
And then she's the one that was like, "Hey, I just heard back from Zimbabwe." So I sent my application off. I hear back. So I'm going with people I already
Oh, that's
know.
so
I've
cool.
already like, right? And another coach had already, delivered on that stage, so I had a lot of support in that way. But the flight itself, sitting between two Africans going back to their homeland for the first time in a long time, and the talk just like in my head, right? But I landed and I made the best delivery that I had, even better than what's recorded. And it
Mhm.
was that first night at just within the community itself, right? And that was so fire. And then it was a couple days of like rehearsing and then delivering, and then once it's done, I mean, this has been your heart and your baby and your life for months, however long it
Mhm.
was, until you learned it and delivered it. And then I was like, I'm staying in the country, of course. Right? Like, I'm gonna like
Yeah.
check this out. So I was there for a couple more weeks and saw Victoria
I was gonna
Falls.
ask.
I went to, yeah, that was like my big adventure. And I'm a hostel girly, so I stayed at hostels both in the capital city and in Vic Falls. And I actually am in contact with about a dozen Zimbabwean and Kenyan folks, like on the regular, since that trip. Like I've never felt such beautiful hearted people and culture in my entire life. It was such a beautiful place to give a first talk.
She's either really holding it or it paused.
Am I back?
And she's back. Wow, I was
And
like, you ended with, and I'll make sure to make a note, around 21 minutes. Uh, you ended with, I've never felt such. And I'm like, she's either holding this and like for suspense and teaching me how to speak right now. You never felt such.
good-hearted, like such sanity. I don't know. That's how the only thing I can describe it is like there's a sanity
Yeah.
in that. I'd walk into a place and I'd leave with like five people's phone numbers. Like there was just this like connection of like, let's hang, let's communicate, let's learn, let's grow. They pray together on the bus before you leave and when you get to your destination. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and one of the probably my favorite too is just like also being a nature uh folk
Yeah.
is there's not some of the places there's not restrooms, right?
Mm-mm.
Like from a long haul, and I took the overnight bus, and one moment it was like, all right, everybody's off the bus, and it was just me and all these African women on the pavement, just like, I mean, I was confused why they were on the pavement. Like I was like, let's be off the road, right? Because the
Right.
splashing.
Oh,
But
yeah, they do this all the time.
right.
Yeah, but
So
to the point they also flying toilets if it's the other way that you have to go. It's not just a number one, but a number two. It's one of the work that I did when I was over there. I had a colleague of ours, Holly, went to Hawaii recently, and she was saying, she's like, part of me wants to go there part time. She's like, or live there part time. She's like, it's this magnet that when I'm there, it's like drawing me there, and then when I'm there, it like almost draws me downward, like really just grounded. I have no place to be, and she's like, I don't know if you felt that before. I'm like, yeah, Africa. Like it is
yeah,
such an amazing. I, People can look at the term developing country in the negative. Me personally, I'm like, that's what I want. Like that develop it. It's for me. It's this. There's something, uh, just like guttural about it. That's just enjoyable.
yeah,
But coming
I love
back
that.
to what speaking has given you, all these, it's just watching you light up as you talk about it. Again, another question I wanted to ask later, but we're already, wow, 20 minutes in.
We're doing it.
What do you feel? And maybe there's a couple answers. What do you feel is like the hidden power that speaking has for
Mm,
yourself as the speaker? Because that, like, any person out there that's looking to get their message out is like, you're probably going to have to project it somehow, whether through written word or through your voice. And that's scary and vulnerable and uncomfortable, writing a book, writing a blog, but also speaking, right?
mhm.
What do you feel as a speaker and a speaker coach is the hidden power of speaking?
So just to be clear on this, I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna answer it however I want,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
but your curiosity, Dylan,
Uh-huh.
lies in like the hidden power after you go do it, or
Honestly anything, because I almost feel like I was writing this question out because I always like to like take notes. I'm like, I'd like to write this. I'd like to ask this. And when I wrote it, I'm like, that seems vague. Of course, like speaking is like you're getting your message out there, but I'm like, there's something deeper that I feel people don't get, because if they got it, more people would do it, right?
yeah, yeah. I have about three things
Hell
to this.
yeah.
Yeah. So the first, I love the response. So the first thing is that just the mentality, the perspective, the mindset that to create an idea that's worth spreading, to use the TEDx tag,
Mhm.
you gotta, like, we going back to chaos and order, you gotta go in that inner world ecosystem and process and learn those things and position it in a way. And again, this is why, Leader is so amazing, because you have that support and that container and that feedback who's accompanying you to like make it and shape it into that sculpture, right?
Mhm.
But the real first thing is like harnessing the power of going within and going like, I got this. Like, I know that there's a problem that other people are dealing with, and life has schooled me. Earth School has
Mhm.
schooled me
Mhm.
in that. And I actually know that I have a gem
Mhm.
for other people because, the one who, the power that be like guided me through this for a reason,
Mhm.
and it's for my own learning, but it's also now I get to share. So there's a generosity. So there's a framing of like, I can go within and actually in giving, I receive.
Mhm.
But in that, there's two other components to it, because I don't know if it's like our amygdala or, like what's going on with our human psyche and where this lives. But I think that there's often this attachment, right? Of like, oh, well, I'm going to speak. So then it has to look a certain way, and without even being conscious of it sometimes. So I tell our clients all the time that there's a two-step process, and it's cupping your hands. That's number one. It's not reaching, grasping.
Mhm.
It's like receiving,
Mhm.
trusting, right? Like this is meant to be, again, back to the ladder on the right wall and your dharma, and there being a blueprint for your life. And there
Mhm.
a reason that you have this call and this pull to say something is like there's timing to it. There's some more schooling and lessons. So once your hands are cupped, then the second thing is staying in motion. So it goes back to like the holy algorithm served me up, but then I had to say yes. I had to enter the door.
Mhm.
I had to pay the admission. I had to say I'm going to show up, and I'm going to pay attention to what I pay for,
Mhm.
right? By putting in the work. So I think it's really the framing, of in giving we receive, this is a gift, and then to do that, I'm gonna cut my hands while also staying in motion.
Ooh, I there's a reason I asked you that question, right? I love like your mysticism or your mythology of how you describe it, because from what I've seen working with clients, what I've seen with people that want to get their voice out there, it's like you want to, and then and I've felt this as well. I think naturally where our mind can go in that fear, right? Because like I said, the first thing is like the mentality and that shift. That shift happens on the other side of a bunch of bullshit that we go through, right? Like we like beat
Yep.
ourselves up, and I think in that bullshit era or uh, eco
Passage.
passage, yeah, we're we're stuck with imposter syndrome, which is like, oh my gosh, no one wants to hear me, no one wants to hear me, no one wants to hear me. Or on the other side, we're like, I don't have to have this ego to speak, and like you have to hear me. But through that comes, no, I have a gift. It doesn't have to be attached to how great I am. It's I want to get this out to the world so other people can see. It's what we're doing right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is anytime I do these, I'm scared, and I think of like, oh, what if people don't like this, and things like that. But then in the flow of it, it's just so beautiful and fun. And then to get feedback, like, oh, it was like you're so lively on podcasts, and I'm sure you get feedback on your talk as it comes out and people hear it. It's like that's and you know that it's not you. I know it's like that's not me. That's just source working through. Man,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Okay,
Yeah. Thank you.
other side of it, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
love the hidden power and how you view it. We can go multiple ways here. You're probably going to have 4 or 5 answers for this as well. What do you think now, as being one of our speaker coaches and coaching people every week, sometimes every day on their talks? What do you feel most people get wrong or don't understand about um, speaking, whether it is the framework of it, right? How it lands, or what goes into it or comes out of it? What do you think most people don't understand?
Yeah. I'm glad you're asking this question. And really, honestly, my answer comes from when I thought about this. I was like, yeah, it's just going to the things that I'm kind of saying the most,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like it's the broken record. The first one is what details to include and what not to
Hmm.
include. Because when we speak in conversation, even in this podcast, right? Like if this was polished, if I scripted this, there's something I probably wouldn't have told you about pissing on the road.
Oh, damn it.
No, maybe not. Maybe I would have, maybe not, right? But and that's why we like the free flow too, because there's honesty and ad lib
Yeah.
and that creative flow, right? But in a polished talk for something like the TEDx stage, we have to be so diligent and discerning and constantly asking ourselves, does the audience need to hear this detail to understand what I am conveying, right? And if yes, keep it in 100%. If no, out the door. So like
Mm.
dates. We always want to tell people what year it was
Mm-hmm.
or how old we were. That nobody else cares.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's relevant to something like the pandemic or the recession or
Mm-hmm.
and even then I've had people, oh, 2008, and it's like Gen Z might not know
Yeah.
what 2008 means,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think details and just the way we tell story we want to include a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
in something like a talk, you're going to be very intentional about what details you're including.
Mm-hmm.
When I watch my talk back, I'm like, I was a baby. I have a lot of criticism and critique for my talk now, even 6 months later, right?
Mm-hmm.
On some of these very things that I'm talking about. Uh, can I give you two more?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the other thing about it is not investing we. So in my coach training, actually, my teacher said, everyone's tuned in to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Mm.
And you could think, oh, well, that's kind of selfish or egotistical, but really it's not, right? Because especially we're on YouTube, we're like YouTube universitying it up. We got a TEDx talk plan, trying to learn something about racism, for example, if you're watching my talk. And we want to know what's in it for us. So as a speaker, that's the thing in the first drafts that people are always struggling with. And I've even come up with like, there's a timestamp, like at around 3-4 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
5 at the very latest, we're switching from I land to we land. And it's honestly just as simple as the packaging of our script of like, how we're writing it. But it's also like an energetic shift of
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to you. This
Yeah.
is for you.
Now enough about me, and that's coming at 3 to 5, right? Well, let me at least tell you who I am. Now enough about me, shifting into the we.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. And I had another one. What did I
I was
have?
gonna say
Oh
I
yeah.
think I'm at 2, but I'm taking a bunch of notes.
The other one, yeah, well, I think I heard you're like going.
I'm going through
Yeah.
Leadr program to do my own TEDx talk.
So,
Notes.
talk yeah. And also like talk practice coach. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. You.
I'm going with you on that. So the other thing I would say is there's actually a time and place when we've kind of like warmed up, we've like let the audience get to know us, we've exposed the problem that we're going to solve in our main point of our talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a few little strategies. One is like in the story, it's really powerful to be able to like drop the listener into the scene with you. That's why we like stories. When we feel like we're in the scene, we forget that we're like even listening to something because we're like in the imagination
Mm-hmm.
of the speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do that with sensory detail and dialogue, inner dialogue, dialogue between humans. Watch some of the like most viral talks online. That's what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's this technique when we're getting into the main point where we just it's like it almost feels silly when we're creating the script, but there I think for audience psychology, because that's the thing, we're writing for the ears,
Mm-hmm.
not for the eyes, and that's the biggest trip is we want to be conversational. And to be conversational, sometimes it's like being so explicit. Like that's another critique that I have. I just watched my talk over the weekend and I was like, whoa, I probably lost a lot of people there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's to just be gentle with the audience psychology because it's a different experience to be tracking just with auditory
Hmm.
sound.
I love
Yeah.
that. Right for the ears.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Okay. And before we shift to the uncomfort zone, because we're already past typical time, which those that have watched know that I tend to do that. What is, let's say someone's like, hey, love Leadr. I actually want to do what you did. And if so, click the link in the bio below. But there's other people that are going to be watching this and they're going to say, hey, maybe not a TEDx talk yet. What are things that people can do to like start to perfect that speaking mastery, even if it's like they're dipping their toe in?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. I recently got approached by a church that I sometimes go pray with. They asked me to give a sermon. It's a very like open
Mm-hmm.
community, and but it made me realize, like, even if that's not your way, there's community organizations. I mean, just as simple as social media and doing a live, or it's different than having a live audience,
Mm-hmm.
but it still forces that clarifying pathway in your brain to be like, I am now speaking to
Mm-hmm.
present this exact topic, right? And just working those nerves out that way. But also there's opportunities, like right now I've got it on my wish list. I feel like I need to hire somebody who's good at jokes. For the artichoke, have you heard of that stage?
Mm-mm.
It's cool, look it up. The
Okay.
artichoke, I think it's in New York, but there's also one, the Moth, like radio hour. Like, I've been thinking, some of those types of things that are like broadcast. Um, and then just any kind of local community things,
Yeah.
like maybe, and it doesn't have to be official. I mean, I feel like you could, if you were really interested in it, you could be like, all right, I'm throwing a popcorn party on Friday night with people who already know me. And I'm going to just like give a 10-minute talk and see how it feels to have an audience of people who already know and love me.
Mm-hmm. And I love like local events, super local, like personal events, social events. Because if you take even something that one could say is simpler, it's right there on your phone. But then everything you talked about earlier was speaking of like the mentality shift that
Hmm.
comes with it, like getting that feeling even at that level, and then at the next level, and then at the next level. It's like you're starting to do that even with these small steps. We talk about in Business Accelerator Inner Circle, part of Leadr as well, is like TikTok and social media is a virtual stage that you have at your palms
Uh,
every day to perfect your speech and to like remind yourself of your passion. Um, which now that leads to getting into the uncomfort zone of the podcast brought to you
yeah,
by leader.co.
that's how
Uh,
we like to end. That's
yeah.
how we like to end.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah. Uncomfort zone is how we end. Why, like for you, why did you decide? You didn't have to get outside your comfort zone for any of the things you've done in your life, whether it's like actual ecosystems, inner world ecosystems, talking about racism, speaking, coaching. Like for you, why did you decide to get outside of your comfort zone, Corbin Paul?
thank you, Dylan Barr.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of life for me. I decide it again and again, and the reason is because, what's that word for people who like pain? I don't think I'm
Masochist.
masochist. I'm not a masochist, but I like the pain of growth because I know that I'm growing.
Yeah.
So it's that for me. It's like I know that the good things come from the hard things, and I just feel like life is way too short to not just like throw yourself in the fire.
You and I very similar on that answer. Why do you feel? Second question. Why do you feel most people don't? This is ego hat off, right? Because we're not saying
Yeah.
everybody, but why do you
Yeah.
feel there are people out there that don't get outside their comfort zone?
God, so many reasons. I do want to just point to the inheritance of global systems
Mm-hmm.
that we're all living with in late stage capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's so many myths, talk about myths, but that aren't aligned
Mm-hmm.
or aren't with the ladder on the right wall. And I want to answer this with a lot of grace for people that aren't getting outside of their comfort zones, because man, there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of pressures, hustle culture. One that I dealt with personally is the like married with children,
Mm-hmm.
um, young, right? Like some of these things that you feel like that's what you're supposed to do, and then one day you wake up. I'm just thinking about, I just saw Sturgill Simpson show Johnny Blue Skies. Did we
I
talk
think
about
so.
that?
You did tell me that.
Yeah, but some of those lyrics, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
just like one day you wake up,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think there's so many factors, but I think it's just, sometimes I think about how hard the world is, and that I actually just want to have grace
Yeah.
for people who are like maybe still sleeping, because it's easy, why wouldn't you want to be sleeping
Yeah.
in this trash?
Sleeping's awesome. I just did it for 8 hours last night. No, I get that. And also like the myth of like for me envisioning this big wall that society's putting up right now and trying to go through it is uncomfortable. Like you said, it's the
Right.
pain of it, but then also hearing from you, it's like the beauty of that decision to do it and then see it forward. There's two sides of it, right? Like, it's not, oh, I've got uncomfortable, I'm better than you, right? No, it's,
Right.
I've done this, I felt it, I get what it's like on the other side. And
Hmm.
I totally understand. That being said, though, what would your word, as someone that you, like you say, you love that pain of making that decision and growing, what would be something you want to tell someone that's listening to this that's like, man, I want to get uncomfortable? Like, let's say they're on the precipice. What would your words for them be?
Hmm. I love that question, Dylan.
And the word precipice, which I've only learned like a year ago, and I'm
Oh, all
32.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
bring in the new vocab. Let's train it up. Yeah, and precipice too. That's a scary thing, right? Because it's like we're looking down, we're like, oh, we're gonna like fall. Yeah, we're gonna take the free fall. I think that people entertaining getting uncomfortable is just, I'm gonna unabashedly say the coaching craft
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
We can be accompanied. We can have the collaborative creativity. And the real coaching is not advice based, it's question
Yeah.
based, so that you get to unlock your own inner wisdom and have somebody witness you and maybe infuse some of their own
Mm-hmm.
that's flowing through them. But it's like discomfort isn't all bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much relationship and so much tenderness that we can bond around when we decide it. And doing it in community is how we were designed
Yeah.
to do it.
I love that as an answer. It reminds me of like when I was younger, and again, I think having an ego is normal. For someone to be like, "I've lost my ego," I'm like, "You have a huge one." If you're saying you have zero, right? Because it's there. It's like it's a good thing at times. But like when my ego was overtaking me, let's say at a
Hmm.
younger,
Mhm.
stubborn age, and I would consult people and coach people and be like, "Man, I know this." That's what they would say. Like, "I know this." And in my mind, I'm like, oh shit, I'm not doing my job. Yeah, but now when someone says that going through my program, I'm like, yes, yes, you know this. But
Yeah.
having someone to help pull, like having someone to talk to so you can bring this out of yourself, I think is what's worth it. And that's what lights me up as a coach. Also,
Or-
what lights me up is speaking to Korbin Paul. Thank you for today. Notes that Dylan took. There are a lot and they're messy. We talked about so much. We talked about leading voice, leadership being putting your ladder on the right wall and asking yourself that. I think that question, if someone's watching it, is huge. Is it on the right wall or is it on the wrong wall? If it's on the wrong wall, not a bad thing. You gave grace to people so much through this talk, but do you want to shift it? And then a voice being like more of the cutting edge, like the first voice. We talked about taking the decision, and you said masochism, but I'm like, what I wrote down is like the decision itself is fun and
Yeah.
powerful, right? Getting schooled early. So, like, really putting yourself out there now. We talked about healthy ecosystems. Watch it if you want to know what that is, because that was really, really fun. Ways to, like, tap into your inner ecosystem, right? Whether it's your body or your mind through the breath, through walking, through writing, through visualizing. We talked about having the right system support and accountability, something that you really look for, and the power of speaking being that mentality shift and like the trusting of what the almighty, the universe is giving you, and then have the momentum to run with it, right? Intent and action, and then just getting started, even if it's something social or local. um, so much cool content. I really, really appreciate having you on the show. If you are watching and you liked this, like and subscribe. But also drop a comment, and I'm sure Korbin will go through them and comment back. What questions do you have? What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? We don't have huge egos where we're going to say you're wrong for not agreeing. Let us know below. Watch these further. Watch next week's when we put it out there. Thank you so much for watching. And Korbin Paul, thank you so much for being on It's a Matter of Speaking.
So grateful, Dylan. That was lit up my day.
Oh,
Thank you.
great. Now let's go have a great weekend. You take
Yes.
care, Korbin, and those watching, you take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.